Empty space. It is that place where we live, the Afro-American nation. If the flag catch a fire, then X burn in. The only stripes is on our back. The only star blown free in the northern sky. No red, but our blood. No white but slavers and clubs in the woods. No blue but our song. If the flag catch a fire, then X burn in. That X is black. And that space that is left is our history, now a mystery. We only live where the flag is not, where the air is funky, the music hot. Inside the hole, in the American soul, that space, that place empty of democracy we live. Inside the burning boundaries of a wasted symbol. Ex-humans, ex-slaves, unknown, incorrect, crossed out, multiplying the wealth of others. If the flag catch a fire and an X burn in, that X, believe me, is black.
Amiri Baraka.
It seems strange to do an Amiri Baraka event and Baraka himself not be here, in the flesh that is. For Amiri Baraka was so much a founder of what became Black Studies, a frequent visitor to Africana, a friend and comrade of Jane Turner, who sends his regards but had to be out of town this week. Amiri Baraka presented here last at our 40th anniversary celebration. But make no mistake, for the spirit of Amiri Baraka is definitely here. As you will see as this evening's event unfolds, he will be here visually as well, in his words, and in the influence of the new generation in the presence of Jessica K. Moore, who in his homegoing celebration, captured best for many the energy of Amiri Baraka. There was a man who you will see, unafraid, challenging, bold, conscious, self-interrogating, who moved through generations and embodied all the components indicated here. It is in his spirit that we create a jazz and words space this afternoon at Africana. We celebrate Amiri Baraka. We introduce our sister Jessica Kemo to you. Our tagline of this evening's event, Amiri Baraka, beats, black arts, radical intellectual tradition, and hip-hop poetry. The program for this evening's event will include a series of poetic presentations interspersed with video clips. Thanks to Stella Hassan and Kwame, we are blessed also by Paul Muriel, who created a combo acknowledged on the program just for this event, just because we needed it. Thank you. There will be a reception immediately following this event, and Jessica K. Moore books are on sale in the front. We thank our co-sponsors for their generosity in helping us put this event together collaboratively. We thank Jessica K. Moore for agreeing to come in the midst of several other obligations. Welcome. Whalers.
We are whalers. Don't get scared. Nothing happening but out and way out. Nothing happening but the positive, unless you're the negative. Whalers. We whalers, yeah. Whalers. We wail. We wail. We could dig Melville on his ship, confront the huge white mad beast, speed death across the sea to eat. But we whalers. We can kill whales. We can get on top of whales and whale. Whalers. Undersea defense, Hot folk, blues babies humming when we arrive. Boogie ladies strumming our black violet souls. Rag daddies come from the land of never say die. Reggae workers bringing the funk to the people of I. We wailers, alright. Hail to you, my man. We will ask a question all our lives. Could you be loved? I and I understand. We see the world. Eyes and eyes say yes to transformation. Wailers, I wailers. Subterranean night color magi working inside the soul of the world. Wailers, I see the world being. Hey, Bob, wail on, rock on, John, come into us as real vision and action. Hey, Larry Neal, wail on with Lester and the pork pie, wailing us energy for truth. We wailers is all. Lie on me if you want to. Tell folks it's yours, but for real, wait, not tell-telling. The sensitive knows who the wailers be. We wailers, blues blowers, the real rhythm kings. We sing philosophy, hand-blown precise findings, image masters of the syncopated, wailers and drummers, wailers and trumpet stars, wailers and box flippers, wailers and sacrifices, wailers and bass thumpers, wailers, hey, wail, we wailers. Trombone benders, magic singers, Alatonians, the only trains faster than rocket ships. Shit, kind of rocket in our pocket to put a cord on the wall of the wind. Wailers, can you dig wailing? Call me Bud Pie. You want to imitate this? Listen. Sweetie. My calling card, the dialect of silence, the sound approach. Light one day, but we feel even further with we. Numbers we song, but primitive place now. We wailing, we kept underground, we kept in mind. Call me something dukish, something sexy. Call me by my real name. When the world changed, we wailing be in it. Make it for real time. Call me, I call you. We call, we say, hey wailers, hey wailers, hey, hey, hey wailers. Wail on. Wail on.
is an old reggae standard called Swing Easy. It's actually Melody Fiddler on the Roof. And we would like to continue and do a short version of one teasel. A composition was finished by Duke Ellington called Carole. I could say just a couple more words. One is thanks to the wonderful student musicians who joined me here. So we have a graduate student, John Mason, on tenor, undergraduate and senior Stefanon Zina on bass, and Craig Sinha on drums. Please give it up. This weekend is the Cornell University Jazz Festival, and there are 4 events starting on Thursday through Sunday. And there's guest artists coming in from New York City who are playing with the students and collaborating. There's some posters on the back. A wonderful trumpet player from Brooklyn, Josh Evans, is going to be here. Hal Galber, a wonderful pianist, and Gary Smolian. And there'll be lots of concerts associated with their stay here on campus. So if I could plug, please come by. It would be great to see all your faces. We have to go because we have another rehearsal to go to. So thanks so much.
Amiri Baraka will get jazz here at this time. Amiri Baraka.
Baraka was a leading force in the black arts movement of the 1960s and 1970s, but he first came to prominence as a Beat Generation poet. He co-founded the journal Ngugi and published the works of Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac, and Gregory Corso. At the time, he was known as Leroy Jones. In 1963, he published Blues People, Negro Music in White America. The book has been called the first major history of black music to be written by an African American. A year later, he published a collection of poetry titled The Dead Lecturer and won an Obie Award for his play, Dutchman.
Dutchman was the last play he published under his birth name, Leroy Jones. After the assassination of Malcolm X in 1965, he moved to Harlem and founded the Black Arts Repertory Theater. He soon became a leader of what was known as the Black Arts Movement. In 2007, he appeared on Democracy Now! And talked about his name change.
I was Everett Leroy Jones. My grandfather's name was Everett. He was a politician in that time. My family came to North in the 20s. We've been there a long, long time. My father's name was Leroy. You know, the Frenchified aspect of it, because his first name was Coyen. You see, they come from South Carolina, you see. I changed my name when we became aware of the African Revolution and the whole question of our African roots. I was named by the man who buried Malcolm X, Ishion, who died last week. He named me Amiri Baraka, but that's Arabic. I brought it down into Swahili land, into Tanzania, which is an accent. So it's Amiri instead of Amir. And, you know, Baraka rather than Baraka, you know, which is interesting. If it was Amiri Baraka, I'd probably have more difficulty flying.
Well, now I'm reading from Ishion Hutchinson.
Good evening. So I'm going to be very brief. Happy to be here, to be a part of this tribute, and I'm glad that it's happening on this soil, in this space. I decided to read 3 poems. The first is a very short poem by Amiri Baraka, and it's a very light but deceptive poem, and I was first attracted to it because of the title. A poem for speculative hipsters. He had got finally to the forest of motives. There were no owls or hunters, no conny chotelees resting beautifully on their backs, having casually brought socialism to England. Only ideas and their opposites, like he was really nowhere. And the second one is by, I always butchered his surname, and hopefully you can help me out, Christopher Okibo. I got it, right?
You got it.
I got it. Come thunder. Now that the triumphant march has entered the last street corners, remember, O dancers, the thunder among the clouds. Now that the laughter, broken in two, hangs tremendous beyond between the teeth. Remember, O dancers, the lightning beyond the earth. The smell of blood already floats in the lavender mist of the afternoon. The death sentence lies in ambush along the corridors of power. And a great, fearful thing already tugs at the cables of the open air. A nebula immense and immeasurable, a night of deep waters. An iron dream unnamed and unprintable, a path of stone. The drowsy heads of the pods in barren farmlands witness it. The homesteads abandoned in this century's brush fire witness it. The myriad eyes of deserted corn cobs in burning barns witnessed it. Magic birds with the miracle of lightning flash on their wings. The arrows of God tremble at the gates of light. The drums of curfew pander to a dance of death. And the secret thing in its heaving threatens with iron mask. The last lighted torch of the century. So now, to end and to mark a decline, this is my poem. And it is dedicated to Wilson Harris, whom I don't believe I have to explain. But certainly when I first encountered Wilson Harris's work at university in Jamaica, I was so attracted to it and confused. And so this poem sort of came out of that frustration and out of that deep love. I find that I have a lot of poems in tribute to writers that I don't know how they have shaped me. I know that I have loved, I do love their work, and Wilson Harris is one of those figures, as well as the great Amiri Baraka. So Harris was a surveyor in the forests of Guyana, and I think partly he might have found a kind of plant there that he chewed on that gave him these sort of visions, right? Sort of a different spice from what we have in Jamaica. A surveyor's journal. I took my name from the after sky of a Mesopotamian flood, birdless as if culture had shed its wings into a ground vulture on the plain. Beneath the astral plane, a war-ripped sail, rigged to its mast, a lantern and a girl, who swayed and stared off where the waves raced backwards. I begged her in signs. She jumped overboard, arms sieving seaweed, eyes netting home. Dear Ivy, you live in my veins. Spurned flesh, I couldn't bridle the weather veins shift. It turned and turned into a landfall, and I, panting panther, sleek carnivore of the horse-powered limbs, ran from a reign of terror. All my despairs in rain, on leaves I prayed to the mantis, head wrapped in white, reading the song of God over a bowl of beef. Afterwards, I hemmed into my skin this hymn. O lemon souls of the mass migration that ended in drowning, O embroidered heart and marigold wrist that brushed the copper-brown fields, O cargoes that left the dengue jungles and ended up on the Yellow River shores, O compass points that needled the new to the old, stitching meridians into one tense, O reflecting telescope that spied the endangered specimens, clashing head brass, the vertical man versus the horizontal man, those who lost their surnames to the sea's ledger, beached up on the strange coast, waiting for the starliner to cross that imagined Mesopotamian water, the ship's bulwarks in sleep, weighed down a spirit bird, my calm, to never flounder, to walk holy and light on this land.
I've been asked to give what Amiri Baraka calls, in our terribleness, a lecture past dead cats. Amiri Baraka wrote in my mother's copy of Spirit Reach, Asante, for being so black. Thank you for being so black. The first time I met Baraka, he told us over lunch that after the acclaim the Dutchman received, he was being pulled into the dead end of art for pride's sake. But he resisted, and he became, as we know, the prize of an entire movement committed to the art of black power. His art gave shape to an entire cultural movement, the 1960s and 70s Black Arts Movement. He abandoned his beat movement identity as Leroy Jones, his slave name, and became Imamu Amiri Baraka. He and others in this movement of African-American self-determination and global black consciousness chose blackness. This conscious decision to be black is what we see in the 1975 trial of Steve Biko, the cornerstone of the black consciousness movement in South Africa. Judge Bouchoff asked, but now, why do you refer to you people as blacks? Why not brown people? I mean, you people are more brown than black. Biko. In the same way as I think white people are more pink and yellow and pale than white. Judge Bouchoff, quite, but now why do you not use the word brown then? Biko. No, I think really historically we have been defined as black people, and when we reject the term non-white and take upon ourselves the right to call ourselves what we think we are, we have got available in front of us a whole number of alternatives. Amiri Baraka knew that blackness was constantly being put on trial. One of his most lucid explanations of the reasons why people choose blackness is his depiction in Home of, quote, blackness as a country. He writes, quote, in America, black is a country. The black man has been separated and made to live in his own country of color. One of Baraka's most iconic Black Arts Movement poems is a literal call for blackness. In the iconic poem SOS, 1966, Baraka makes the call for blackness sound like the frantic words in a walkie-talkie. Calling black people, calling all black people, man, woman, child, wherever you are, calling you urgent, come in, black people, come in, wherever you are, urgent, calling you, calling all black people, come in, black people, come on in. The speaker must talk quickly and loudly in order to be heard over the static of this two-way radio transmission. The beauty of the poem is its ability to evoke the static without needing any direct representation of this noise. The repetition of the words calling and urgent and the sparse language show that the speaker knows that he must avoid any unnecessary words to ensure delivery of the message in spite of the static and necessarily poor reception. The poet's precise craft becomes inseparable from the crafting of the counter-ideology, the message aiming to destroy the static, the constant interference created by the dominant aesthetic and power structure. In the last years of his life, Baraka recognized that the Black arts movement was being flattened by those who were catering to an apolitical understanding of African American literature. One of his last reviews is a critique of Charles Rous's anthology of contemporary African American poetry. I'm going to go there. Baraka entitles this review a post-racial anthology with a question mark. At the beginning of this review, he writes, "This is a bizarre collection. It seems it has been pulled together as a relentless anti to one thing, the Black arts movement. Charles Rous's introduction and many of the quotes he gleans are aimed at rendering the Black arts movement as old school, backward, fundamentally artless. He calls his poets literary, i.e. Black literary poets," end quote. We need to remember Baraka's refusal to accept this flattening of the Black arts movement, even as he himself, after the Black arts movement, insisted on the need to shift from Black nationalism to third world Marxism. Baraka never stopped believing in Black art that would be bound and unbound to Black self-determination and the Black freedom struggle. In the short story Heathen Technology at the End of the 20th Century, in his short story collection, Tales of the Out and Gone, it's published in 2007, Baraka imagines a certain apocalypse that includes the, quote, dis-imaging of people, a type of mind control that makes people disappear by stealing and collecting their image making. The first person narrator is a witness linked to other survivors who resist the mind control by listening 8 times a day to Coltrane's jazz and looking 8 times a day at Aaron Douglas's images. This counter-hypnotism harkens back to Black arts movement images of Black collective resistance to dominant image making. The short story's call for continued belief in collective resistance emerges most clearly when the narrator asks his apocalypse-era listeners to, quote, remember, and then realizes that remembering is no longer possible in the era of the brain switch, but nonetheless continues to remember the power of, quote, bound metaphor. This bound metaphor is described in the following manner. Quote, if the metaphors of a heavy group were rendered collective and focused on whatever, energy and power could be produced. This language captures Baraka's recognition that the power of the Black arts movement's mobilization of Blackness as a unifying concept was the power of people realizing that Blackness was such a productive collective metaphor. As I end my lecture past dead cats, I want us to grasp the beauty of Baraka's flow. By hearing what he named the, quote, changing saying, we forget that he's the one who gives us that term we keep using to talk about Black aesthetics. It's from Baraka. His Black arts movement is as tied to experimentation as his beat poetry. In the signature beat poem Black Dada, he begins with the words, against what light? I hold on to these words as I think about the Black arts movement's use of black light, those words, black light, as a way of claiming an alternative aesthetic, Black aesthetics. I hold on to the words against what light as I allow his changing saying to wail on, and as I put his many texts in conversation with each other. Against what light? One thinks of home or the other homes we have had. And we remember we love those things bathed in soft black light. Baraka, the system of Dante's hell. Against what light? As your brown is not my brown, that is, we need a meta language. Baraka's the slave. Against what light? We were brought here slaves and survived that. Now we are trying literally to get ourselves back together. Baraka's and our parallels. Against what light? Harlem is vicious modernism, bang clash. Vicious the way it's made. Can you stand such beauty, so violent and transforming? Baraka's Return of the Native. Against what light? If you ever find yourself somewhere lost and surrounded by enemies who won't let you speak in your own language, who destroy your statues and instruments, who ban your boom baboon, then you are in trouble, in deep trouble. They ban your boom baboon, you're in deep, deep trouble. Probably take you several hundred years to get out. Baraka's wise one. Against what light? Asante, Amiri Baraka, for loving us so much.
So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, legendary Amiri Baraka.
This is an excerpt from a poem called Why Is We Americans? But reality is an excerpt on television. Why is we Americans? Why is we Americans? Boodee-da, 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 bee-dee-dee-dee, boodee-boodee, boo-boo-boo. What I want is me, for real. I want me and myself, and what that is what I be and what I see and feel, and who is me and the what it is and who it is and when it me is what it be. I'm going to be here if I want, like I said, self-determination. But I ain't come from a foolish tribe. We wants the mule, the land. You can make it 300 years of blue chip stock in the entire operation. We want to be paid in a central bank, the average worker farmer wage for all those years we gave it free. Plus we want damages for all the killings and the fraud, the lynchings, the missing justice, the lies and frame-ups, unwarranted jailing, to tar and fettering, to character and race assassinations, historical slander, ugly caricatures. For every Sambo, step-and fetch-it flick, we want to be paid. For every hurtful thing you did or said, for all the land you took, for all the rapes, all the Rosewoods and Black Wall Street you destroyed, all the miseducation, jobs lost, segregated shacks we lived in, the disease that ate and killed us, for all the mad police that drilled us, for all the music and dances you stole, the styles, the language, the hidden clothes you got, the careers you stopped. All these are suits, specific litigation as represent we, be like we, for reparations for damages paid to the Afro-American nation. Boodee-da, boodee-da, boodee-da. We want education for all of us and anyone else in the black belt hurt by slavery, for all the native peoples, even them poor white people you see all the time. It's funny, all them Abners and Daisy Mays, them Beverly Hillbillies who never got to know Beverly Hills, who never got to Harvard on their grandfather's wills. We want reparations for them, right on, for the Mexicans whose land you stole, for all of North Mexico, you call it Texas, Arizona, California, New Mexico, Colorado, all that, all that, all that, all that. All that you got to give up. Autonomy and reparation to the Chicanos and the Native Americans whose soul you ripped out with their land. Give self-determination, regional autonomy. That's what Maui is asking, and they're going to do the same when they demand it like us again. And they only exploited name, yeah, the education, that's right. 200 years. We want a central stash, a central bank with democratically elected trustees and a board elected by us all to map out from the referendum we set up what we want to spend it on to build that Malcolm sense self-determination as self-reliance and self-respect and self-defense, the will of what the good Dr. Du Bois beat on. True self-consciousness, simply the psychology of freedom. Boodee-da, boodee-da, bee-dee-da, boodee-da, that ba-ba-ba, boodee-boodee, boo-boo-boo. Then we can talk about being American. Then we can listen. Then we can listen without the undercurrent of desire to first set your ass on fire. We will only talk of voluntary unity, of autonomy as vective arms of self-determination if there is democracy in you. That is where it will be shown. This is the only way we as Americans. This is the only truth that can be told. Otherwise, there is no future between us but war, and we as rather lovers and singers and dancers and poets and drummers and actors and runners and elegant heartbeats of the sun's flame, but we is also at the end of our silence and sit down. We is at the end of being under your ignorant smell, your intentional hell. Either give us our lives or plan to forfeit your own.
I've been thinking about the work of Amiri Baraka for a very long time, like a lot of people. His masterful essays in Blues People were on my freshman reading list at Spelman College, which included 7 works in all. So thus began my journey. Pedagogically, it was a great honor at Duke University as a teaching assistant to share his significant play, Dutchman, among undergraduates in the classroom. I first saw him right here in the multipurpose room and during a book signing during our 40th anniversary celebration in 2010. And I last saw him at Georgia State University last spring when I was there as an invited speaker at the same time as he was. He was visiting in Black Studies and hosted by my colleague Akinyele Umoja. And it was a time when Colson Whitehead was also visiting the campus. And so in addition to sharing my own work, I also got to attend lectures by these phenomenal figures. And amidst the crowd, I had a brief exchange with Amiri Baraka about Toni Morrison. I mentioned that she was going to come to the Cornell campus the next month. And he shared an anecdote with me about having seen her years ago at Howard University during a parade and was talking about how beautiful she looked at the time. It was actually a little story that I shared with her when I got a chance to talk to her last spring. So that is really my last and the memory of him that will remain with me, I think, as time goes on. In my own academic work, I'm primarily drawing on his poem, Somebody Blew Up America, and particularly his critique of Condoleezza Rice and her alignment and endorsement of the Republican right wing. And I used him very saliently in my first book project as well. Significantly, in light of his critique of another Charles, this time Charles Fuller. And so I want to go to the zone of criticism as well and share with you the 4 concluding paragraphs of his essay published in 1983, which is entitled The Descent of Charlie Fuller into Pulitzer Land and the Need for African American Institutions. For one thing, in the arts, we must begin to influence the black bourgeoisie to create the businesses and institutions the whole of the black nation needs. We must implore them to become bigger and better capitalists, since the most important aspect of their own national oppression as members of the black nation is the fact that the big white capitalists keep them from developing into the larger capitalists they aspire to be. Certainly, the black bourgeoisie is motivated by the profit motive, but even so, in an oppressed nation, the productive forces are so poorly developed that we lack the basic institutions that people in the oppressor nation take for granted. Black films and drama can certainly be profit-making operations, as the big white bourgeoisie has found out, whether it is roots or sophisticated ladies. Just want to toss in more recently, 12 Years a Slave. We must struggle with the black bourgeoisie to be less timid in reinvesting their capital in the black arts so that that capital can continue to circulate within the black community, creating more jobs and raising the black national consciousness. The imperialists will never give us the weapons we need to destroy them. Audre Lorde is so resonant there. Realization of our own role as cultural workers within the oppressed black nation and trying to recognize all the other roles that legitimately exist within that struggling nation and united front are critical in building closer ties based on mutual recognition of common needs, based on common oppression. Too often, the black bourgeoisie and petty bourgeoisie cannot even involve themselves in profit-making enterprises or create the positions they aspire to because they lack even the national consciousness to see that the black nation has a great many resources that have not been positively exploited because their use requires the bringing together of different elements and classes within the nation itself. It is the black masses that will provide the will, determination, muscle, and revolutionary fire to transform our lives. The black petty bourgeoisie must be enlisted to utilize their education, their skills, to aid in that transformation. The black bourgeoisie must be encouraged to use their capital to bring such a transformation about. But this must occur in contexts in which they can see how they themselves will benefit. Certainly, we will have to struggle with the black middle class and the black bourgeoisie, as I am doing now, about their views and their total relationship to the black masses. But even a black bourgeois consciousness based on the bourgeoisie's own class interests is superior to the kind of comprador, agent, or messenger of white supremacy consciousness that not having our own institutions creates today. Charlie Fuller's grim descent into Pulitzerland should let us see that clearly.
I'd like to introduce my brother, Ken Mclane, really my brother, Ken Mclane. And he is going to talk about before and after Baraka.
My
brother.
I want to first apologize for the personal nature of this, but that's all I can do. Forgive me.
Yeah.
All right. It is impossible to adequately convey the importance of any person, never mind one of the most central characters in American letters. And of course, I'm speaking about Amiri Baraka, formerly Leroy Jones, someone I knew both by reading him, which is where all of us should know him, and in the flesh, where he was, without question, the most complex person I've ever met. And this is not hyperbole. A brilliant author of over 50 works, someone who always told the truth as he saw it, no matter what the personal cost. Someone who went to prison in America for writing a poem. Think about that. That the judge turned seditious in Newark. Someone who just 3 years ago wrote a poem which he read at Cornell, which is one of the best long poems of his career, and a major poem, one that melded unparalleled lyricism with Baraka's characteristic, uncompromising, lucid criticism of capitalism, empire, and the grinding wheels of a nation-state that murders children everywhere for avaricious, in Baraka's terms, tech junkies. It would be easy to talk about Baraka as simply a poet of enormous talent, a playwright of in-your-face audacity. One can think, of course, of The Dutchman, where Clay Williams will state one possibility for black folks' survival, murder of whites, before he, like most of us, declares that he is a humanist and will not kill. As you know, he, of course, is murdered in the play before he can act on his newly acquired self-affirmation. This is from the play. If Bessie Smith had killed some white people, she wouldn't have needed music. She would have talked very straight and plain about the world. No metaphors, no grunts, no wiggles in the dark of her soul. Just straight 2 and 2 are 4. Money, power, luxury. Like them, all of them crazy niggers turning their backs on sanity when all it needs is that simple act. Murder, just murder, would make us all sane. And what about 3 revolutionary plays in which one character, nominally Baraka's father, a postman, but in truth many of us, walks around the stage with a key affixed to his back. He's a walking automaton, doing the white man's business, having a small job, a small home, and small dreams. Someone who is metaphorically willing to murder his own son for his son's desire to break the shackles of colonialism. It is a brutal characterization of African-American black bourgeoisie life. It was a life that Baraka himself spent his life trying to disavow. In fact, it was this desire to keep finding an authentic self, one that allowed him to see himself whole, as real, terrible, self-affirming, that is the center of Baraka's work in life, as it is for all of us who wish to be black, complex, completed, and whole. And yet Baraka, unlike most writers, was also a consummate political activist. He built institutions, Spirit House in Newark, the Black Arts Repertory School in Harlem, but most tellingly, he convened the Black National Political Assembly in 1967, which was seminal in Jesse Jackson's run for the presidency. Think about this. There was no Barack without Baraka. That's right. More importantly, Baraka made black people see themselves as a locus of power and political advocacy. He championed our relationship to Africa and Cuba and global struggles for social justice. This politics which of course demanded compromise. But it did not end Baraka's Jeremiahs. He helped elect Mayor Coleman Young in Detroit and Kenneth Gibson in Newark. But Baraka literally scolded Major Gibson out of Newark's political life. As he said, "We made you, you failed us, we vanquished you." Baraka did not play. Many of us came to Baraka when he was Leroy Jones, reading preface to a 20-volume suicide note or the Dead Lecture, essential books for those of us who knew we were mentally enslaved but did not know how to heal ourselves. As he writes in Agony as Now, "I am inside someone who hates me. I look out from his eyes, smell what foul tunes come to his breath." These lines, like James Baldwin's Contemplations and Notes of a Native Son, spoke eloquently and unabashedly about our anguish. For many of us did hate ourselves, cocking our hair, whitening our skin, despising our history because we did not know it, loving everything that wasn't us. Sadly, many of us witnessed Justice Clarence Thomas, I didn't call him Justice, still hate ourselves. No one has been more outspoken than Baraka. He would say what many of us thought and were afraid to say. Many times he was right, but since he saw himself as a true agent provocateur, there were times when he was clearly outsized, uncompromisingly ideological. I'm going to be critical. He was critical of me, or just plain wrong. Let me be more specific. Much has been made of Baraka's anti-Semitism, and much should be made. And his essay, The Myth of Negro Literature, which argues that there was no black literature before his work and that of his cohorts, a bit self-serving, you might say, is frankly dumb. To his credit, Baraka rightfully ultimately disavowed the piece. And yet Baraka invariably, in his complex way, saw himself as always performative, and so was willing to sacrifice truth even if it hurt him personally, for his audience, to teach us something. He didn't matter, we did. Once, when he and I were reading together in Virginia, Baraka came to the stage and literally castigated me for the first few minutes of the reading. Do you know what that motherfucker Ken Mclane said? That bullshit mother. And then he gave a riveting performance. After he finished reading, he came up to me with a half smile. You got me started. No hard feelings, man. This is the way I ran up. Baraka thought that I could be as selfless, as munificent, that I, as he, could place my entire body on the crucible of struggle. No way. Don't sacrifice my skin. Baraka, frankly, lived always in the present. He disavowed his past as if it were his genetic code. If you look at his collected works, this is really kind of amazing. In one collection, he lists all of his previous books, be they stories like The Wonderful Book Tales, essays like his superb book about jazz blues people, the plays, the poems, the political tracts as fiction. That is, Baraka is telling us something. He believed that the present was everything, the rest dead. I've often told people that you make a mistake following Baraka as a political leader. He is too shapeshifting. Baraka, whatever his political acumen, is ultimately an artist. He moved with his poetics. Don't bore me, he once told me. And that was his credo. Learn from him, but don't forget that he is a poet, one albeit with great political instincts and intelligence. But you must chart his moves as ideological and artistic. From Marxist to nationalist, back to Marxist, back to third world Marxism. If he is bored, his work changes and ideology follows. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying he's a charlatan. I'm saying he is a feeling artist, one alive to the winds of human liberation wherever it might take him. He is as complex as anyone you may want to encounter. And this is from Tales. I am a poet. I am a rich, famous butcher. I am the man who paints the gold balls on the top of flagpoles. I am no matter more beautiful than anyone else. Baraka, in his early 20s, was married to Hattie Jones, who was black and Jewish, and had 2 children with her. I'm a romantic, as some of you know. When Baraka moved to Harlem from Greenwich Village, which is brilliantly detailed in Tales, the move was both symbolic and real. He was forswearing the bohemian life of the village. I am inside, someone waits me, for the welcoming arms of Harlem, where he might come into his black self. At the time, he said, afire with his new black nationalism, that he never visited his half-white child. That she was dead to him, which of course terribly bothered me. Whatever your politics, that child had nothing to do with it. Well, in Hattie Jones' fine memoir, she states that Baraka came every week to see his child, whatever he told the world. Right? Again, Baraka took on the mantle and the weight of his politics, even to earning the opprobrium of people like me. Maybe I was a bullshit. Okay. You've seen Baraka's performance, by the way. There's no better reader in the Western world. And no one reads better. And I'd like to leave you with one small vignette. He and I did benefit readings for Katrina victims in New Orleans. We worked together on a film about Margaret Walker Alexander in Mississippi. And we went to jazz clubs together. I as a novitiate, he as a consummate insider. Lucky me. When I saw him last, Maury Evans, someone you should all know, and someone who taught here in the Senate, right here, for 5 years, and I were having dinner in an Indianapolis restaurant. Baraka arrived in a cab. He was in a huff. The plane somehow had gone astray and landed in the wrong airport. The cab driver had tried to pad the fare. None of this had happened. Those motherfuckers always playing me, he said. Baraka needed the world to be full of insight, which of course it often was. He could not be permitted to forget the world's ferocity. And then he quieted it down, graciously pulled the seat out to allow Miss Evans to sit, the epitome of grace and decorum, and told me that I needed to go to Rome to buy incomparable suits, a comment that should have been unsettling at this juncture, but was not. Baraka was a master of intersections, dissonant codes. That he talked about his love for and mentoring of Rabbi Coltrane, who had wanted Baraka to tell him about his dad. He's a great saxophonist, like his father, just needs to feel free with himself, Baraka told us. As the night went on, I realized that I was invited to a great congress between two great griots of our history, Miss Evans and Mr. Baraka. And I recalled Robert Hayden's wonderful line, "It is time to teach the children the legends of their blood." Baraka was simply a wonderful raconteur, so full of respect for Sister Mari. The next day, Mari Evans called to ask if Baraka could have breakfast with me. He wanted to see me, but he didn't want to intrude. This writer, who had frightened cities, who was so important to Afro-American letters that we who teach black literature speak about Baraka as providing the marginal line. Before Baraka and after Baraka. Before nationalism and after nationalism. Before the two we. This intellectual, who had been thrown out of universities for unwavering activism, and who was willing to say anything, whatever the cost, because he loved us, was also just a sweet gentleman who felt that my small life was important. Some years ago, I badmouthed you after reading, he told me at breakfast, remembering the berating in Virginia. I was wrong, he said, and then the evidence is brought to the smile. These fucking pancakes, they don't use milk. They just use you up. So, then he smiled, shook my hand, walked up to the waitress, and gave her a $10 tip and a poem. One for the body, the rest for the soul, he said. I watched him go to the hotel's door, look at a far-off wall, and see a poster for a Tommy Flanagan concert, great pianist, jazz pianist, that evening. He'd be late for the plane, would spend the night, go to the concert, and would write one of the best reviews, it's actually true, in jazz history. This was his way. Nothing was ever wasted. Irascible, courageous, brilliant, outrageous, tough-talking, fearless, always up for the count in the struggle, Baraka was always present, tuned up and tuned in, as he put it. If there is an argument for a feeling, lucid, Afro-American intellectual tradition, one that sees struggle and art for life's sake, it is he. Read him, read him, read him. He lived for you.
Yes. W-I-S-E. Africa. 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 Mighty, ancient, beautiful Africa. Creator of the human being, of speech, of music, of the dance, ancient, mighty Africa, beautiful Africa. But when you put your hand on your sister, made her a slave, watch out, Africa. Watch out, Africa, the ghost gonna get you. When you put your hand on your brother, made him a slave, watch out, Africa. Watch out, Africa. the ghost gonna get you. Ah! How did I get here on my back in the dark with the wind and water blowing through my ears? How did I get in the dark? How did I get here in the dark with the wind and water blowing through my ears? Watch out, Obatala, Shango, save me. Save me, Isa, save me. How did I get here on my back in the dark with the wind and water blowing through my ears? My brother the king sold me to the ghosts. My brother the king sold me to the ghosts. At the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, there's a railroad made of human bones. At the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, there's a railroad made of human bones. Black ivory. Black ivory. Wise one. If you ever find yourself somewhere lost and surrounded by enemies who won't let you speak in your own language, who destroy your statues and instruments, who ban your umbu-ba-um, you're in trouble. They ban your boom, you in deep trouble. Probably take you several hundred years to get out. There's a railroad made of human bones. Black ivory, black ivory, black ivory, black ivory. Thank you.
Let's keep welling on with a reading Mukoma and Ngugi.
Leninist. You know, this is the 90s when everybody was running into constructionism. You know, so after that I started calling myself a Marxist-Leninist. Then I read Leninism later, you know. Then the second one was, you know, actually just last summer at New York University, the African department, they had done something. And he came in during the reception, you know, and of course we all ran to him, took photographs, you know. But then later, one of the guys who had taken a photo with him, he was like, who is that? You know, so, you know. But let me begin by reading, I want to read two poems, one by him, called Kaba, and one by me. Kaba. A closed window looks down on a dirty courtyard, and black people call across or scream or walk across defying physics in the stream of their will. Our world is full of sound. Our world is more lovely than anyone's, though we suffer and kill each other and sometimes fail to walk the air. We are beautiful people with African imaginations, full of masks and dances and swelling chants, with African eyes and noses and arms, though we sprawl in great chains in a place full of winters when what we want is sun. We have been captured, brothers, and we labor to make our getaway into the ancient image, into a new correspondence with ourselves and our black family. We read magic, now we read the spells, to rise up return, destroy, and create. What will be the sacred words? And the poem I want to read is called A Collage of Death Masks. It's a poem I wrote a while back. And it's a poem about imagining, you know, the last minutes for some revolutionaries and also for some writers, you know. And in some places I take word for word, you know, what is their recorded last words. A Collage of Death Masks. Steve Biko. With our two hands, we ply open my chest for arrows, tips poisoned with black ink. I write what I like. Amilcar Cabral. To peer past midnight, I have returned to the source. Che Guevara. Next door, a single gunshot announces my friend's death. Hours later, a kid turns on the stand of my wounded leg. Shoot, coward. Your guillotines can only kill flesh, not what it dreams. Franz Fanon. We are nothing unless slaves to a cause. In my militant servitude, I find freedom. Ruth First. When I fell, it was only to go find Mondlane to tell him Mozambique was free, and in Azania, freedom had begun to thaw. Garcia Lorca. In the distance between the bullet and my heart, I cannot remember the prayer my mother taught me. Tell her that her love negotiated this passage for me. Rosa Luxemburg. They keep drawing blood from the toiling oxen. Don't they know that death and democracy are infinite, that we each get ours in the end? Mclane. I read Marx in Struggle, only to realize I was reading him a second time. Possibility of life actualizes in the fact of freedom. I do not fear them or their death. Arthur Noche. This suicide, final plunge, this my last poem, will it erase appetite? Margo. I do not see bullets or death hurtling toward me. I see truth, and if it fails to heal, then it can only kill. Ken Sarawiwa. My blood soaking into the earth to heal its wounded limbs, my libation. Wayaki. In my future, I see Kemali, always on his feet, arm in arms. Thank you.
Lyrae, please, Stefanon.
I wanted to read some poems first from the dead lecturer, thinking about the journey of Amiri Baraka's life and thinking about what moves us and what might move us into a new correspondence with ourselves, and thinking about where one starts, you know, where one is coming from, and where one is headed towards. Duncan spoke of a process, and what I have learned of it, to repeat it as a day will repeat its color. The tired sounds run off its bones, in me a balance. Before that, what came easiest? From wide poles across the greenest earth, eyes locked on, where they could live and whatever came from there, where the hand could be offered, like Gideon's young troops on their knees at the water. I test myself with memory, a live, bloody skeleton, hung as softly as summer, sways like words, melody as ugly as any lips or fingers stroking legs, or flesh like a white, frightened scream. What comes closest is closest. Moving, there is a wreck of spirit, a heap of broken feeling. What was only love, or in those cold rooms, opinion. Still, it made color and filled me as no one will, as even I cannot fill myself. I see what I love most and will not leave what futile lies I have. I am where there is nothing save myself, and go out to what is most beautiful, what some non-combatant Greek or soft Italian prince would sing, noble friends, noble selves, and which one is truly to rule here, and what country is this? This is the dance. Held up for me by an older man. He told me how, showed me, not steps, but the fix of muscle, a position for myself to move. Duncan told of dance, his poems full of what we call so long for you to be, a dance, and all his words ran out of it. That there was some bright elegance the sad meat of the body made, some gesture that, if we became for one blank moment, would turn us into creatures of rhythm. I want to be sung. I want all my bones and meat hung against the thick, floating winter sky. I want myself as dance, as what I am given love or time or space to feel myself. The time of thought, the space of actual movement, where they have taken up the sea and keep me against my will. I said also love, being older or younger than your world. I am given to lying, love, call you out now, given to feeling things I alone can create. And let me once create myself. And let you, whoever sits now breathing on my words, create a self of your own, one that will love me. Snake eyes. That force is lost which shaped me, spent in its image, battered, an old brown thing swept off the streets where it sucked its gentle living. And what is meet to do that is driven to its end by words? The frailest gestures, grown like skirts around breathing. We take unholy risks to prove we are what we cannot be. For instance, I am not even crazy. I got word, thank God it wasn't from the news, it was actually from one of my undergraduates, that Baraka had died. And I thought that it was a real testament that she would text me to find out if I was all right. That was meaningful for me to hear it from her. I wanted to read, Carole had asked me to read something of my own, and I wanted to read it. I'm a girl from Florida, so I wanted to read it in light of Florida's death junkies, and in light of literally trying to get oneself together, and in light of how often we find ourselves lost. Lost. The river, unrolled bolt of silk, gives evening the smell of fish, wet leaves, loosening matter. We glide through its blue plum tint towards night, the leftover tang of red wine in our mouths. Upstream, an idea waits for us. If we were lost, how much more would we love each other? We four move towards this losing with the steady creak and drip of our rowing. We cannot in lowering darkness tell direction, whether the frog's croak came from behind or before us. Our bellies full, the swamp beckons us behind its green drapery. Whatever hides in the tangle, the surprise of cypress knees, the fierce, sharp-edged palms welting our forearms as we walk blind through mottled nights, sulfur rot and sucking mud. What flies into our mouths, impossible to see. Mosquitoes lighting in our ears, their constant whine, high-pitched and crazy-making. The silent patience of gators and our wary estimation of their hunger. We will keep, we are certain, as we lose ourselves for hours, when we find ourselves again bankside, and two must choose to swim because we're not where we began. The river moves despite our stillness, our breath breathing itself into the wet heat. Whether they disappear for good, the two who splash away, their heavy kicking swallowed by this evening. I am of the two who wait, waist high in water, eyes stretched wide to see nothing but night washing itself, black over black in muggy layers, inches from my face. Not my hands, skin of water, curtains of meniscus, my breast where I displace it, my undissolved legs immersed, merged with water, losing above, in, out of, but for these hands sliding over me, another's hands to keep me from becoming current tongue, lisp of leaf tips touching water, but for we two touching, agreeing, this is my body, agreeing, I still belong in it.
Of whom I will continue to speak. It is this Jimmy, this glorious, elegant griot of our oppressed African-American nation who I am eulogizing. So let the butchering copy editors of our captivity stay for an eternal moment their dead eraser fingers from our celebration. There will be and should be reams and reams of analysis, even praise for our friend, but also even larger measures of non-analysis and certainly condemnation for James Baldwin, the Negro writer. Alas, we have not yet the power to render completely sterile or make impossible the errors and lies which will merely be America being itself, rather than its unconvincing promise. But the wide gap, the world-spanning abyss between the James Baldwin of yellow journalism and English departments, and here we thought this was America, and the Jimmy Baldwin of our real lives is stunning. When he told us nobody knows my, he meant our name. He was trying to get you ready for it even then. For one thing, no matter the piles of deathly prose, citing influences, relationships, metaphor, and criticisms that will attempt to tell us about our older brother, most will miss the mark, simply because for the most part they will be retelling old lies or making up new ones or shaping yet another black life to fit the great white stomach which yet rules and tries to digest the world.
Jessica Care more. That's how much you have to read, right? Jessica Care Moore is the CEO of More Black Press, executive producer of Black Women Rock, and founder of the literacy-driven Jess Care Moore Foundation. An internationally renowned poet, playwright, performance artist, and producer, she is the 2013 Alvin Locke Award recipient from the Detroit Institute of Arts. Moore is the author of The Words Don't Fit in My Mouth, The Alphabet Verses, The Ghetto, God Is Not an American, and a forthcoming book of poetry, Sunlight Through Bullet Holes, and a memoir, Love Is Not the Enemy. She has performed her poems in solo theater shows all over the United States, in South Africa, and across Europe.
From her Broadway performance at Carnegie Hall, or Harlem's Apollo Theater, London's Institute of Contemporary Arts, to New York's Jazz at Lincoln Center, Moore believes poems belong everywhere and to everyone. She is well known for history-making, record-breaking appearances in Showtime at the Apollo, and is the youngest living Apollo legend. She is recording her first jazz project, Black Tea, The Legend of Jesse James, which features Blue Note recording artist Jose James and the talented young Detroit bass pianist John Dixon. Actually, there's a lot, so we want to do all of it. No, she's like, please no, or we just go to the end and just. No, she's like, no, let's read the last.
Sure. There's so much we could tell you about Jessica Moore. So we're condensing.
Yes.
An activist, she has lent her voice to the international fight against AIDS. She has performed for the United Nations World AIDS Day commemoration 2 years in a row. Moore was a consultant and one of the organizers of the successful Hip Hopathon concert in San Francisco, which helped increase AIDS education in the Black and Latino Bay Area communities. She has performed in front of thousands of people during AIDS Walk opening ceremonies in New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Florida, and Atlanta.
Her new techno-solo theater performance, The Missing Project, Pieces of the Deep, is a high-energy homage to Detroit, affectionately known as the Deep, featuring the music of underground resistance spun by DJ Stacey Hot Wax Hale with live art graffiti artist Antonio Shades Agui. Moore continues to push the boundaries of genre with her first conceptual installation, Nano, I Sing the Body, Electric, opening at the Del Pryor Gallery in 2011. Her work is currently on exhibit at the American Jazz Museum in Kansas City. She lives in downtown Detroit, where she is proud to be raising her 7-year-old visual artist, baseball-loving, hockey-playing son, Keith Moore. We want to say that when we talked, Margo and I, we were like, we have to find Jessica Care Moore and bring her, because at Amiri's homegoing, she just embodied.
She embodied it. She ended it by saying it. I told Jessica earlier, she went to the mic and she just said, somebody had to show them how to do it. Join us in welcoming Jessica.
We didn't go Pakistan, but you sound so beautiful saying my bio. I want to record you saying my bio at all times. So let me just first say thank you, Carole, for finding me. We met in Miami, Florida. Was it last summer? During the Miami Black Film Festival, I was in town and had a show with a mutual friend of ours. And thank you, Margo, for just pulling together to make this happen. I saw Dr. Clark's. I didn't know that the Africana Studies, is it the library's named after Dr. Clark? It's just, I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be here. I actually, Dr. Clark, like Amiri Baraka, for many of us, was a mentor just by reading first, and I was just a little baby activist in Detroit, and then moving to New York City to Brooklyn and later to Harlem, actually got to meet, Dr. Clark, and he, before he passed, he was losing his sight. And he came out to one of my first plays at the New York Poets Cafe, and just blew my mind back, and listened to this chorea poem that I wrote called The Revolution in the Ladies' Room. And afterwards, I won't read the poem, I reference him in the poem, and God Is Not an American, told me, he said, you sound like Malcolm. I was like, I'm from Detroit, And so it's still very, very, very surreal for me, as it is, I'm sure, for anybody that really knew Amiri Baraka, to be here, and he's not in the room. For the last 20 years of me being a full-time poet, though I know I'm just 25, it's a miracle. I've shared so many stages with him. We've been all over the country together, literally. And the last 2 times we were together, we were performing just last year at the National Black Arts Festival. And so I got to have an amazing experience. Ray was there, because I bought Ray. Actually, we were in Detroit at the Charles H. Wright together too, as well. I got to see him. And every time, you know, who doesn't have a great anecdotal story about Amiri Baraka? But one of the, there's a few, but I just want to mention a couple. And one is and I'm still like shook up. So I'll pull it together. But I walked into the lobby of the hotel. We were staying at the National Black Arts Festival. We both were performing at the Rialto Theater, and with a bunch of other cool people. And Pam Grier was there, it was like really fresh. And so I walked in and his room wasn't ready. So he's sitting there with his son, and one of his sons, Charles, was in often. And I'm like, hey, what's up? Oh, you're in the lobby. And so his room wasn't ready for like an hour, so we sat there and talked. And I said, I was carrying my bag that I have right there. And I was like, you know what, I only got 1 book on me for this trip. Guess which one it is? And he's like, what? I said, the one you gave me in Detroit. Because he was signing books, his chapbook of, I don't know, maybe Who Blew Up America or something. I already had the other book. And so I saw Razor sitting under the desk, kind of hiding. I was like, what that book at? And so, you know, slid it to me because he wasn't selling it. And he said, you got it on you? I said, yeah, I got it on me. I've been carrying it around. And he said, is it signed? I'm like, it is now. I'm about to hook it up. And so I took it out. And so I got my signed copy of a Razor. If you don't have it yet, if you're a fan of his writing, you should pick up Razor. It's like my Bible, Quran, everything. Torah is like everything together in one thing. Is Razor. And the anthology you spoke about is so important for me because that critical review that he wrote, that was fantastic. Of all the poets that loved him, from my generation to his own generation, to babies under me, you know, he could have called anyone's name, and for him to have called my name in that review, I cried, you know, and I was like, as people were calling, like, you know, Amiri Baraka referenced you in his, and I'm like, no. And then someone sent it to me in the mail, and so I'm going to read a couple of my own poems, and they're all mine, but I'm going to end with the piece that I wrote for him at his memorial service, which I wrote pieces of it actually at his house, because I went to the wake, and so we went over to Amita's and to Mike Raz, who's one of my closest friends, and has been for many years, and is an author of my press. I published Raz Baraka's Black Girls Learn Love Hard. And so I felt really connected to the Baraka family just because I published Raz's book. I probably shared more conversations with Amiri than I did Raz, but Raz and I were always close because we just had to be. And him passing has been a really deep experience for my generation of poets. We talk on the phone a lot more often now. Everyone kind of went, you know, did their thing. Saul, you know, went to wherever, to LA, and then I've been in Paris, and he's back in Harlem, and it's fitting that he's back in Harlem because it's good. And, you know, Willie Perdomo's like teaching, and Tony Medina's at Howard, and all of us are kind of doing our collective, our things in our individual worlds. And Amiri like reminded us. I remember I called Saul, and we were just quiet on the phone. I never call Saul. You know, he's my first author in my press. I don't call him. I'm like, what up? I don't talk on Facebook, whatever, you know. And I called him. I was just quiet. I was like, hey. He's like, hey. He said, so here we are. I said, yeah. You know, here we are. You know, it's actually happened. And we were planning Amiri and Sonia's 80th birthday parties. Like, that was already happening. Charles H. Wright was here, we were already talking about it. Me and Thomas S. Ellis were talking about it. Like, okay, what are we gonna do? So somebody's gonna want to do, you know, Sonia and Philly. You know, we're gonna do a big one for Amiri. So everybody was already talking about how to collectively celebrate their birthdays this year because they both turned 80 this year. And so it has shook our community a lot in a really, really deep way. And, you know, there's an anthology called Call Our Names that I've been hoping to publish, and now I have the fire because of Amiri passing. It's just under my ass, like, Jessica, get it done, because I realize how out of context my generation's work has become, how we are not, we don't get reviews, academic institutions bring us, but don't respect us. And, you know, and that's when I talked to, when I told Carole, like, it was definitely no offense to hip-hop poet, but it's not how I define myself. And so that's something as a metaphorical daughter of the Black arts movement, which I consider myself, you know, I have to say that that's not how I define myself. And I have to put that on the flyer so some of you younger students will come see it and make it cool or whatever. But we are writers and poets, children of the Black arts movement writers, and that's who we are. You know, we're not, all of us don't call ourselves spoken word artists, and all of us don't call ourselves hip hop poets, and I definitely don't call myself either one of those things. But I've been writing books since 1997. My 13th book on my press is coming out in the spirit of my mentor, Hakeem Adabuti. And so that's the work, those are the writers and the people that I've looked up to and learned from are institution builders. They're not people who juggle and do dance moves while they do poems. And so the fact that I do perform though, for sure, but Amiri did too, and Jane Cortez, you know, did too, you know. Like I've got a full rock band, you know, I get down. And so but you should be allowed to do that, you know. But when you're a Black poet and you do that, then suddenly you're no longer a poet, which I think is pretty ridiculous. So anyway, in the spirit of that, I'm reading poems. I'm not quiet, and I don't read quiet poems. And I write them, I just don't read them. Where are you going? No! I just play it. I'm not, you better come back in here. Okay. I'm gonna do it slow. Okay, so this is a series of haiku I wrote for Etta James. And my jazz project is dedicated to women of jazz because women like Etta James and Phyllis Hyman, Billie Holiday, and Nina Simone, you know, they fill us all up and we're inspired by them. And, you know, we listen to their music and then you think about their lives and so many of them die tragically. So many of them die with, you know, tracks in their arms and shit up their nose. And, you know, and I said to myself, you know, me as a mom and an artist, you know, it's hard. I understand why that happens because there are months when you don't have any money. And so, you know, there are months where you're hungry. It's not easy when you don't teach and do art on the side. I don't teach. I do art full time and teach at residencies. I don't have to, you know, and one day I'm going to be like the cool professor with gray locks, 2 days a week, standing on a table screaming at some students somewhere at a university campus. But for now, I still have that energy of wanting to touch people in different places. And so, and I always get worried when I see some of my writer poets in academia, which I think happens when that anthology came out. Some of my snooty-dooty Black writer friends, you know, were like, oh, mad at Amiri Baraka. And I was like, you can't be mad at him. Like, he's a scholar and an intellectual, and he can wipe your ass with your poetry. And so, how can you act like he doesn't have the right to say that? Like, it was ridiculous, but it's because they're so far up in the academy, trying to keep up with white folks, tell them it's correct, that they forgot that their writing is really good. Like, these are people whose books I would buy, but they have forgotten that their work is good, you know what I mean? Even if it doesn't sound like a white man wrote it. You know, it's okay to be your Black writer self. And that I learned that from studying Amiri Baraka and Hakeem Adabuti and my mom, Sonia Sanchez, and Jane Cortez allowed me to be in Ntozake Shange, being my full Black woman self with my work doesn't make me less than a writer. You know what I mean? It's not. I'm not less than because I can do this, you know. My voice is heavy, so I play with it, you know. But it's just poetry, you know. It is. It ain't like we don't. So I wrote this for Etta James. So it ain't like we don't like loving. Y'all say that. It ain't like we don't like loving. Let me hear you. It ain't like we don't like loving. Y'all need to talk. Be too quiet. We die for the blues because we're born with it. We die for the blues because we're born with it. It ain't like we don't like loving. It ain't like we don't. Let's call and response. It ain't like we don't like loving. It ain't like we don't like loving. We die for the blues because we're born with it. We die for the blues because we're born with it. Madness, the veil of the mic, our voice flight, memories don't lie. We die at broken hearts, transparent art, they clap, pretend to be smart. Proof of existence, feminine, fossil for frauds, we cry, we birth, we deliver smile, forced in our mouths, open, history pours out. It ain't like we don't like loving. It ain't like we don't like loving. We die for the blues because we born with it. We die for the blues because we born with it. It ain't like we don't love candles or ashes lit. We the flame smoking. America holds our hearts, or royalty owns our essence rebels. Music is not yours to take. Music is not yours to take. Stone rolling blues runs deep in these thick veins. The beautiful ones, alone with the notes dancing inside a body. Spirit fills the void, laughter measured broke. Holy bread, we melt on tongues. At last, rock and roll gets on its knees. Thanks, mama shall come first, they say. It ain't like we pray to a different God, you know. Amen, ashe, peace. It ain't like we pray to a different God, you know. Amen, ashe, peace. Wonder what they do with our bones, build a shrine. Queens sleep in death, I guess. Our legs still shake, shed our skin by wind as breath. Lucy has daughters. Lucy has daughters. Fatherless but still, daddy meant the world. Absence makes art profounder. Blind is a blessing when you got eyes everywhere looking for your flaws. Etta, it's Sunday. Etta, it's Sunday. As I write this 12:09, kind of love these tears. It ain't like we dream of nights in armor shining, not since music played. At a wedding stop, pain inspires genius tongue. I made that man great. Know your place, brown girl. Don't sing that tune too loud, screaming through the speakers. It ain't like we don't like loving. It ain't like we don't like loving. We die for the blues because we're born with it. We die for the blues because we're born with it. I really loved earlier how people were speaking about, I don't know, someone was reading from Amiri and talking about his work and saying about being very rooted in nationalism and being very rooted. I mean, I think people, and black people in particular, need to be allowed to grow. I've grown. Like my first book, The Words Don't Fit in My Mouth, everything was black in my first book. I didn't know any other color. I don't know. And everything was black. Black of the Berry, Black Road Juice, Black Statue of Liberty, black, I mean, everything. I was like, oh God, I'm black. I'm writing poems about it. So I mean, I was like 19, you know, whatever. And then, you know, my second book, The Alphabet versus the Ghetto, you know, it's like I'm more deep, the poems are more abstract, there's a little more hip hop there. You know, I've been in New York City. I've been married, at least one husband head down, I don't know. Two to go, I'm just kidding, no, but no, come on. I was on one husband by then. And then I was at polyandrous about last night, it's a mess. And so in this is my third book, I'm a woman, for sure, in this one, and a mother, and so this perspective changes, you grow. But the older I've gotten in my work, the more very woman-focused my work is becoming, and that's undeniably who likes my work. Black, white, Asian, Native, whatever, are women. Men like me, but are scared of me. Women love me, they're not scared, so whatever. But, I mean, men aren't scared like, ooh, but, you know, they love me, but they're like, I don't know, she's gonna kill me. I don't know, anyway. Because I say stuff like that, so they think that way, I guess. But this is called Even the Light-Skinned Girl are Sick of the Light-Skinned Girls. And I say that because, you know, my first, going to South Africa to perform, you know, rocked my world because the way that I look. And I grew up in a place called Detroit, Michigan. I grew up under Coleman A. Young. I'm a Coleman A. Young baby. So the new white Mayor Duggan is like, I'm cool with Mayor Duggan, I'm getting to know him, I'm filling him out. But that's not a Detroit that I recognize. You know, we were black institution builders and black teachers, and I grew up with that. I went to Detroit public high schools and very grounded. It wasn't even like, you know, a push down my throat nationalism. It was just the way it was. That was normal for black people to own things, to run the city. That's the city I grew up in. And so, to be so rooted, to go to a place called South Africa when I'm so yellow black and there under apartheid, and even still today, because don't believe that apartheid isn't alive and well in South Africa, just like it is alive and well here in institutions like this. You know, Jim Crow still exists, it's just, you can't see it, you know, so much. And so, even the Light-Skinned Girls, I said the Light-Skinned Girls is something I wrote when I was performing. I was on tour with the poet Linton Kwesi Johnson, who was amazing, right? And so, you know, I was just a baby trying to get him to like listen to me and look at we were having hat contests, you know, he's so fresh. But anyway, I did this poem called Box This, which is about the multicultural category they wanted to put in the census form many years ago, right? So I remember when Obama came out, it was like 10,000 categories of black people, where I was like, we don't know what to check. It's like 10 things that mean black. And so I've always, like, I grew up, you know, very much rooted in who I was and just happy with just that term black, you know. It's like, that's enough, black, brown, whatever, you know. We are people of the earth. But in South Africa, you know, because of apartheid, it was just some, it's different than Jim Crow. You know, because then it separates, you know, my brother is darker than you, my brother Billy. So me and my brother Billy couldn't have attended the same school. You know, and so that's a different kind of weirdness. And when the laws are in place, it's not just separate white people from black people from other black people. And so I wrote this about a little girl who was crying after my show, and she was like holding her father's hand. She said to me, to my face, you know, you don't understand. And I said, yes I do, because I am you. And I wrote this poem for her. In South Africa, the radio disc jockey says, you can get killed for speaking that way in this country. The government doesn't mess with you for reading poems like that or speaking that way in America. Yeah, they kill us. They ruin our credit. As soon as we get to college, they make it harder to live in invisible ways. It is a slower death. The colored girl cries because I'm not telling her story right. I am colored here. It is difficult to explain myself. Isn't it black, so black and yellow and native and twisted and confused? I was raised in Tom Moore's house. I was raised in Master Moore's house. My daddy was black, native, Motown, Southern, Cadillac, African, loud on purpose, big smile, dimples, called the white boys at the Canadian border niggas. My daddy, with rifle on porch during the riots, took my Canadian-raised quiet mother down south in the 60s in his convertible green Cadillac. My aunties told her to stay in the house, Irene. She didn't understand this was not a safe place for love, loud like my daddy's. I never put down those crumpled bags of paper tests of blackness. The red blood and high cheeks of my people don't subscribe to this psychodrama, Jim Crow, South Africa, Mississippi, divide and conquer. The red clay, boom, bap, jazz, deconstruct the hip-hop nigga, you heard me, destroy the slave whip before the slave ship. Yoga your way out of this chaos. Across oceans, this ugly that connects us. Hi, yellow girl in South Africa. My daddy is from Alabama, 1920s cotton. In Harlem, we are all just Puerto Ricans. It don't matter, say, oh, Lord, damn it, you know me, little girl. I'm your sister. This don't even exist. They made it exist in a nightmare to steal your gold. The poverty is what they left inside all those books. You are golden with broken eyes, circling me, an ambush of pupils trying to get me to get you, but I am you. You talk like a white girl. You black at the white school. You love your white family. You don't know nothing else. You don't have to choose a side. You a whole woman, a whole person. You ain't multi-ethnic diversity class poster child. You a whole heart, an entire lung. You breathe in humanity. You just a baby being born, just an ancestor covered by skin. My ancestor was a dark chocolate West African woman. She said she wanted to see what it felt like, said it was okay, but something was missing, so she scarred my face to give me edge. I see your scars too, child holding your father's hands. I'm sorry, I'm not the mirror you asked for. I am also my father's child. I am who I say I am. President Obama is a black man. He is who he says he is. This is not privilege. This is political choice, because even the light-skinned girls are sick of the light-skinned girls. I want to leave with y'all. Don't play with me. We're going to leave together. Okay, where are you going? You have a class? Really?
No, I have to run to it.
I mean, tell them I'm here. I'm just messing with you for real. Sit down. Okay, so anyway. Really, I'm just kidding. Nah. Anyway, so I'm going to read these from Malcolm because I know Amiri Baraka love Malcolm X, as many of us were inspired by him. So this is a series of haiku that I wrote from Malcolm X. It's called Transformation Haiku. Detroit red, red clay, greased down, pimp, mother's heart, the edge of freedom, be born a little. Hides, journey within, butterflies like Ali fly. This is my new home. This is my new name. I found brotherhood and now they want to kill me. Strange fruit, same tree falls. My daughter survived, legacy hides in pigtails, spirit combs through life. Your smile made us smile, racism on their tongues, hurt, joy don't break, never. Malcolm is a poem blowing toward the east, Islam is a way of life. Transformation time, focus despite threats, truth lives, change kissing your heart. Wrap him in white silk, Harlem man with Detroit walk, carry us home with love. You saw the bullet and smiled, America breaks wide open ocean. I got my first death threat in 1995, I was never scared. I thought of you, moved to Brooklyn, found Harlem, homecomings, hand grenades, Detroit red. As in, I read that book, my first band, inspired by your work. There was a fire in her belly, there was a fire, voice like water, free. My poems can't stop bullets, but bullets can't stop me from writing more poems. We took over schools, boycotted, wore your ex-hats, we sampled struggle. Your blood still fresh on the streets of New York, Detroit, we caught you mid-fall. Shining prince, you gave us armor, poets became poets in your light. How many hands, to carry us home? Our grassroots moved across 8 Mile a long time ago. 50 years later, your heart beats Sankofa style. We don't cut the grass, we still don't own the grass, we still need you, Malcolm. Raz Baraka, who's going to be the next mayor of Newark, New Jersey. Y'all should clap for that. We need a poet in office, thank you. They try to use poet, like the word poetry, against him, and I think it's really ridiculous. You know, like, it's like something less than, because he actually cares and knows art. It's like plugged into, like, his father's like one of the greatest scholars, intellects of all time. That's a bad thing, but they really do use it against him. That means he can. For all the other things, and when I used to introduce Raz, when I brought him out for the book signings and things like that, anytime I've introduced him, we've done shows together the last few years, you know, I would say 12 other things before poet. Community organizer, principal of a high school, you know, gang troops manager, you know, I mean, just everything. He was a principal at Central, was saving the high school and still coaching the basketball team at another rival school. Like, he did everything. Father, you know, philanthropist. Now, you know, I mean, what do you want? You know, and it's such a horrible thing that he happens to be a poet and the son of a really amazing, amazing human being named Amiri Baraka and an amazing, beautiful poet mother named Amiri Baraka. Like, that's being held against him. It's deep. So anyway, if you have some money, give some to his campaign. It's razjbaraka.com. You know, we need the support of intellectuals, thinkers, educators to get behind the Newark campaign. You guys don't have to live in Newark, but after he's married, you might want to live there one day, you know. I think that we just need to support campaigns like that all over the country. So we have people like Chokwe Lumumba, who we just lost, and Raz Baraka in positions of power in these cities, and then we can transform our cities. Because I don't believe in Barack Obama as Jesus. That's going to like come down from the cross and save us as a people. I really think we have to do it city by city, local government, local politics, those people who we have to entrust, who actually care about the communities we live in. The one man from one place can't save us all. So I'm working on the city that I'm in, called Detroit. I'm doing what I can for the city that I'm in, around the people that I affect every day. People I buy food from, that I look at, or ride my bike around, that my son gets taught by, like all of that. And so, anyway, I want to read a piece from Black Girls Learn Love Hard. Raz Baraka had come to Detroit, and him and Hakeem Adabuti were at a naming ceremony. They're renaming a street after Pro Cleef's dad, who started the Shrine of Black Madonna in Detroit. And so it was for Reverend Cleeg. And I said, you know, Raz, it's crazy that you don't have a book. You're this fierce poet. You got this great voice. Where's your book of poetry? You know, and he was like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should do it with you. I said, well, yeah, it's not a great idea. Let's go. And so I did what every Alabama-rooted, you know, sister would do when somebody's in your city that hasn't been in Detroit. You take them to your mama's house and feed them. So I brought them to my mother's house, and we fried them some fish, and we had a bunch of food, and we talked about this book. And then Raz went home, and Shani Baraka was murdered, who is Amiri's, you know, daughter, and of course Raz's sister. And I didn't know how to approach a talk about a book after Shani died. And then some time passed, and he called me and said, I have the manuscript for you. It's for my sister, and it's called Black Girls Learn Love Hard. And so this is, yeah, just a couple poems he wrote. He numbered them, I think, 1 through 9, 10. And yeah, for Shani. My sister is a black girl poet. The way she bit her bottom lip to the passion of her crossover dribble to the basket, the way her pants rested on her shoes or her hair against her cheekbones. My sister is a black girl poet, and she meant everything she didn't say. So imagine when she did speak, yeah, my sister is a black girl poet. Number 2. I can't remember hugging my sister ever. I mean, I could kiss new girls against cold hallway halls. I could grind hip to hip in dark clubs till my pants would sweat, but I can't remember hugging my sister ever. I could speak volumes and excite minds to action. I could fill my words with great emotion and write till I feel and then feel, but I can't remember hugging my sister ever. And if there's anything I wish I could do and do in order that the world changes or that I can love freely without guilt, is to hug my sister just once and remember. So that's why Baraka Black Girls Learn Love Hard. Sanchez opened forward to it, and Ronaldo Davis did the artwork on the cover. All the More Black Press books have paintings on the cover, and so just as a young publisher, I was kind of dedicated to supporting also the visual artists in our community. You know, often get that love. And so I guess I'm gonna end. I'm going to read the piece that Carole can't believe I don't read it, but I'm going to read this piece on Damn Right that I wrote for Amiri Baraka. Can I read one more piece before that? Do I have time? It's okay? It's just one I want to read because I think, you know, I just have to have this commitment. This is, you guys all know John Coltrane, right? Yeah, right? John Coltrane, right? Yeah. So everyone knows John Coltrane. One of his famous songs is what?
Alabama.
Yeah, which another one? Has one name. It's a woman's name.
Naima.
Okay. So this is called Naima. And I wrote this because I'm really interested. I produced a concert called Black Women Rock. I haven't slept probably in like 3 or 4 days because I just produced my 10th anniversary of Black Women Rock at the Charles H. Wright Museum in Detroit. If you go to blackwomenrock.com, you'll find out what I've been doing. And it's not the TV show that gives awards to those girls. It's a rock concert in tribute to Betty Davis, who's a rock funk pioneer, who was married to Miles Davis, and helped create jazz fusion by introducing Miles Davis to Jimi Hendrix. And so without Betty in Miles' life, Bitches Brew wouldn't have happened. And so, and I believe she's on the cover of that one. And so Betty Davis, beautiful, who lives right now, and is pretty much a recluse, but lives in Pittsburgh. You know, she's alive. And so I wanted to tribute a woman that was alive still, but because we destroy our artists and don't give them love enough or money enough to sustain themselves, and drain them by just with their, you know, taking their art from them and not giving enough back to their real everyday lives, often they can become recluse or are embarrassed because they don't have the money that you think they have or whatever, and they kind of disappear. And this happens often with women, especially women married to famous men. And so Naima, if I tried to find one picture of her, and if you Google, see, stuff like this makes me cry because I'm weird. But I mean, I really was like trying to find an image of her, and I can't find one. You can find Alice Coltrane, of course, you know, because she's famous in her own right, Detroit, oh. But Naima, who inspired this amazing piece of music, doesn't have an image attached to her name. If you search for it, you can only find John Coltrane. So I wrote this for her. Naima, Invisible and Infamous. Did Coltrane know it was rebel music? Would he have given us permission to hold him in this light? This is not my Coltrane poem, or is it? Denial is an art form. Truth is blood and water digging under notes, and excavation is dirty, unyielding, wrapped in Moroccan silk, pulled gently behind the ears, a tea kettle ringing, knuckles against a window, a cutting, a black scream, a set of eyes, a series of memories, a disappearing act, a rediscovery, a writing out of history, a wiping out of refrain. Bridges. She crossed them, she bore them. Where are her critics? No one is checking her tracks, her arms for content, for context. What percentage for soul? How much publishing for breath? Discovery, the royalty for royalty. How much for the use of hearts? A musical ghost chanting, an invocation, an awakening. We scream in the clarity of the blurry. Oh, sorry, hold on one second. I'll make sure I'm not reading this because I got too many poems. There we go. There we go. And an invocation, an awakening, Naima, 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 Naima. All praise the muse, Naima. All praise the forgotten, all praise the goddesses, all praise the wives, Marcia and Ishion, Dream and Tara, Latasha, Lisa, Tamakali and Joy, Imani and Sonia and Nikki, Sapphire, Alice, Karen, Joan, Karen, Amina, Betty, Belle, Vale sisters, matriarchs of metaphor, Medusa, unstoned, dancing inside the moon. How many lovers, how many midnights howled, clapped, mispronounced your name, your exalted whisper, Naima. Blessed are those who trespass against you. I want to see you. I want to see us, face you, hear your smile, pull your heart from the mouth of his horn, blow, make a wish, tell your story.
So I'm going to end with this, this piece, and it will be published in my new book, Sana de Bullet Holes, which was supposed to be out this week, but it got pushed back because I was busy producing a show and I had to just refocus. And so this is called Damn Right, and I have to say this. So the first part of the poem, with me talking about the death of my father, is a poem that I wrote in tribute to Amiri Baraka on his 70th birthday, and it's actually in my book, God Is Not an American. So the beginning of it is in that book, and then some of the end is when I asked how to tell him, somebody had to show him how to do it. That poem I wrote for his 70th birthday, and so the part, everything after, it's just a couple lines from the beginning that I took the first stanza, and the rest is, I wrote some of it the day before the funeral, and then I wrote some of it, I wanted to go into the house, I went into that famous basement in Newark, and just soaked up some energy, so I could, you know, when Raz asked me to read, I was terrified, you know, I was like, what am I going to say? How do I properly do this? And I knew I wouldn't be the only one, I know I'd be in good company, and Tony Medina was brilliant. You know, what I really, I don't know who went to the memorial service here, there you go. What was really amazing to me is how they allowed the younger poets to start. How Tony Medina began, you know. I was like, wow. Because, you know, Sonia was there, and Haki, and of course they spoke, but, you know, Amiri was so about us. He really was, and they knew that, Raz knew that. He was so about, you know, he looked at me once in his house, he said, where is you from, Jessica? And I said, I don't know, Amiri. He's like, where is you? I'm like, Detroit, you know? And I mean, he was just, and what people say about him, like his personality, I mean, he always smiled with me. Like, he was always warm and beautiful with me, and cracked funny jokes, and, you know, so he wasn't the grumpy guy that I guess people got the grumpy Amiri. I never saw the grumpy guy. Like, you see pictures with us and he gets smiling and he gets happy. And, but I'm a girl, so maybe that's it, I don't know. I mean, he was always very warm and beautiful with me. And I very much wanted to know if I saw a book. He said, what year did that come out? So God Is Not an American came out like in 2009, 2010. So he would look at me like, where the next one? What you doing? You know, okay, that one's, but I got that one. And so he did in Atlanta. I got to show him the cover of Sound Like a Bullet Holes. And he loved it. He said, that's a powerful cover. And I said, it's coming, you know. So he kept me, pushing me to continue to make new work. So I wrote this for him. It's called Damn Right. And thank you for asking me to read it. And I hope to do it justice again. The death of my father at 69 reminds me that every new year is a kiss from God. Or maybe it is simply a reminder that catching bullets in our teeth are not just for comic book superheroes. The literary giants also battle against the monster heads of Connie and Bill and survive unscathed. The black voice is eaten but never deconstructed at the table. I'm eating poems today. Thank God we always turning. Nobody wants to see that much truth standing still. We swallow keys like piano, drink streams like water. Attention critics from nowhere. You might be forced to wear your spine to work today. Amiri Baraka is busy with a higher calling. Somebody gotta ask, who gonna be the messengers? Where is Sun Ra? Where are the Holy Ghost? Our prophets? Why do they call us hip-hop or say we slam when we are your students, Baraka, the invisible ones, the spooks that knock down doors? We don't juggle or hopscotch or jump through fire. We write. We know your bright sons had plans for this morning. We know your daughters are reimagining the night. Others began writing our suicide letter for us a long time ago, ignoring the young cultural revolutionaries who taught us how to breathe inside the polluted cesspool of segregated libraries. In the name of Baraka, we dance, we teach,
teach, we tear down, we build up. We believe in the face of the faithless. We move with those who be stiff. We fly with those who have moved, those who be still. We have no choice. He created the spire. Who gonna keep it lit? Scholar with sword, master teacher with miracles as metaphor. Who gonna call it ignorant, ignorant to their faces on national television? Who gonna make love inside of 8-bar blues? Here comes the heart, here comes our cities, here comes the people. You don't have to explain your chakra, just breathe. Here comes Baraka. Damn right, here comes the justice. Damn right, here comes protest. Here comes the hat tail, here comes the big boy stance, here comes freedom, here comes peace. Who gonna spike the tea? Who gonna plant a poem and grow a life? Who gonna bring the scholars out their ivory tower prisons? Who gonna call a spade a king and out-joke the joker? Who gonna build the local bombs when the world and our bookshelves dying a little more every day? Who gonna teach the children? Who gonna rebel? Who gonna go into our prisons? Where are our redemption songs now? We conjuring the whole truth language from the scraps of a twisted alphabet. The chitlin backwash taste of bitter standardized testing and watered down curriculums. We are the economy of pyramids, the who we bees and the what we did. We what they thought was hid. Damn right these words don't fit. Damn right the record skip when your life was a calling. When the ancestors have prepared you for the politics. How do you pick the red pill or the whitest fence when our cities are born with the bluest eyes, the darkest tales, and the most beautiful African people who don't know they is Africans? Who's cutting the grass at the killing fields? The dream dealers, the beat creators, the painters, the poets, the movement people, the truth tellers, the lovers, the liars, oh bless you, the liars. Whose blues they gonna steal now? Which names they gonna mispronounce? Leave out, set back, pretend not to know. He created the spire, who gonna keep it lit, huh? Who's gonna print the books? Who's gonna print the books? Who gonna program the silences? Who gonna own the bookstores? Who gonna burn down the house? Who gonna tell them the revolution is your mirror? He created the spire, who gonna keep it lit, huh? Baraka black, Baraka jazz, Baraka blues, Baraka dance, so there were no shoes to drag. Where you from? Detroit, Newark, Harlem, Tuskegee, Berlin, Palestine. Who gonna fill the ark with art? Who gonna be the new? Who gonna recognize the old? Who gonna identify your soul? Spirits don't lie, but the papers do. Who will control who? Remember you, me, you, we. Damn right, your stories are that of a lion on the front line of an American schizophrenic jungle. Prophet footing and warrior ink blood, they cannot kill us all with their black face and tragic, twisted imitations of life. We understand Amiri Baraka has outlived your double cross. His books held political prisoner by unestablished, unsophisticated establishments. We hold his words as armor, as a symbol of our fearlessness. We ask his children, his wife Amina, for permission to claim him. We smile his boyish grin, waiting for the local bomb to drop. He teaches us there is jazz playing every time the sun rises. A jackal of words, a blues man with his hat always in place. You, father of movement and possibility, Baraka black and artistic, handing out pamphlets full of rebellion and resistance. We know your life work is simply an answer to a question. Why God? Why ancestors? Why Malcolm? Why Langston? Why Jane? Why Lucille? Why Hakeem? Why Iskia? Why Gil? Why Sonia? Why Last Poets? Why Asha? Why Tony? Why Saul? Why Thomas? Why Mike? Why Kevin? Why Akira? Why Ursula? Why Lamar? Why Willie? Why Carole? Why Major? Why Lisa? Why ancestors? Why brilliant? Why organizer? Why fathers? Why uncles? Why scholars? Why essayists? Why teacher? Why legacy? Why black genius? Why Baraka? Why God? Why in the hell did you have to make me a poet? And God replied, Leroy, somebody had to show him how to do it. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for having me. Love y'all. I'm around. Long live Amiri Baraka. Teach his work, put them in your classroom, fight against the system. Put my books in your classroom too. That would be great.
Somebody blew up America. All thinking people oppose terrorism, both domestic and international. But one should not be used to cover the other. Somebody blew up America! They say it's some terrorist, some barbaric Arab in Afghanistan. It wasn't our American terrorists, it wasn't the Klan, or the skinheads, or the them that blows up nigger churches or reincarnates us on death row. It wasn't Trent Lott, or David Duke, or Giuliani, or Schumler. Helms retiring.
It wasn't the gonorrhea in costume, the white sheet diseases that have murdered black people, terrorized reason and sanity, most of humanity, as they pleases. They say, who say? Who do the same? Who is them paying? Who tell the lies? Who in disguise? Who had the slaves? Who got the bucks out the bucks? Who got fat from plantations? Who genocided Indians, tried to waste the black nation? Who lived on Wall Street, the first plantation? Who cut your nuts off? Who raped your mind? Who lynched your pride? Who got the tar? Who got the feathers? Who had the match? Who set the fires? Who killed and hired? Who say they God? Still be the devil. Who the biggest only? Who the most goodest? Who the Jesus resemble? Who created everything? Who the smartest? Who the greatest? Who the richest? Who say you ugly and they the good lookingest? Who define art? Who defined science? Who made the bombs? Who made the guns? Who bought the slaves? Who sold them? Who call you them names? Who say Dama wasn't insane? Who? Who stole Puerto Rico? Who stole the Indies, the Philippines, Manhattan, Australia, and the Hebrides? Who forced opium on the Chinese? Who owned the buildings? Who got the money? Who think you funny? Who lock you up? Who owned the papers? Who owned the slave ship? Who run the army? Who was the fake president? Who the ruler? Who the banker? Who the devil on the real side? Who got rich from Armenian genocide? Who the biggest terrorist? Who changed the Bible? Who killed the most people? Who do the most evil? Who don't worry about survival? Who have the colonies? Who stole the most land? Who rule the world? Who say they good but only do evil? Who the biggest executioner? Who? Who own the oil? Who want more oil? Who told you what you think that later you find out is a lie? Who found Bin Laden? Maybe they Satan. Who paid the CIA? Who knew the bomb was gonna blow? Who know where the terrorists learned to fly in Florida, in San Diego? Who knew why 5 Israelis was filming the explosion and cracking their sides at the notion? Who need fossil fuel when the sun ain't going nowhere? Who make the credit cards? Who get the biggest tax cut? Who walked out of the conference against racism? Who killed Malcolm, Kennedy and his brother? Who killed Dr. King? Who would want such a thing? Are they linked to the murder of Lincoln? Who invaded Grenada? Who make money from apartheid? Who keep the Irish a colony? Who overthrew Chile and Nicaragua later? Who killed David Sebeco, Chris Hani, the same ones who killed Biko, Cabral, Neruda, Allende, Che Guevara, Tandino? Who killed Kabila, the ones who wasted Lumumba, Mclane, Betty Shabazz, Princess Di, Ralph Featherstone, Little Bobby, locked up Mandela, Deruba, Geronimo, Asada, Mumia, Garvey, Dashiell Hammond, Alphaeus Hutton? Who killed Huey Newton, Fred Hampton, Medgar Evers, Mikey Smith, Walter Rodney? Was it the ones who tried to poison Fidel? Who tried to keep the Vietnamese oppressed? Who put a price on Lenin's head? Who put the Jews in ovens? And who helped them do it? Who said America first and okayed the yellow stars? Who killed Rosa Luxemburg, Liebknecht? Who murdered the Rosenbergs? And all the good people iced, tortured, assassinated, banished? Who got rich from Algeria, Libya, Haiti, Iran, Iraq, Saudi, Kuwait, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Jordan, Palestine? Who who cut off people's hands in the Congo, who invented AIDS, who put the germs in the Indians' blankets, who thought up the Trail of Tears, who blew up the Maine and started the Spanish-American War, who got Sharon back in power, who backed Batista, Hitler, Bilbo, Chiang Kai-shek, who decided affirmative action had to go? Reconstruction, the New Deal, the New Frontier, the Great Society. Who do Tom Ass Clarence work for? Who do come out the colon's mouth? Who know what kind of skeezer is a Condoleezza? Who paid Connolly to be a wooden Negro? Who give Genius Awards to Homo Locus Subsidiary? Who overthrew Nkrumah, Bishop, who poisoned Robeson, who tried to put Du Bois in jail, who framed Rap Jamil Alameen, who framed the Rosenbergs, Garvey, the Scottsboro Boys, the Hollywood 10. Who set the Reichstag fire? Who knew the World Trade Center was going to get bombed? Who told 4,000 Israeli workers at the Twin Towers to stay home that day? Why did Sharon stay away? Who? Explosion of owl, the newspapers say, devil's face could be seen. Explosion of owl, the newspapers say the devil's face could be seen. Who? Who make money from war? Who make dough from fear and lies? Who want the world like it is? Who want the world to be ruled by imperialism and national oppression and terror, violence and hunger and poverty? Who is the ruler of hell? Who is the ruler of hell? Who is the most powerful? Who you know ever seen God? But everybody's seen the devil. Like an owl exploding in your life, in your brain, in yourself. Like an owl who know the devil all night, all day if you listen. Like an owl exploding in fire. Like an owl exploding in your life, in your brain, in yourself. Like an owl who know the devil all night, all day, if you listen. Like an owl exploding in fire. We hear the questions rise in terrible flame like the whistle of a crazy dog. Like the acid vomit of the fire of hell. Who and who and who?
That this could not have happened without co-sponsors, the Cornell Hip Hop Collection, Creative Writing Program, English Department, Minority, Indigenous, and Third World Studies Research Group, Office of Academic Diversity Initiatives, Africana Studies, and Research Center. Thank you, Stella, for hooking up the video clips with Kwame. You did an amazing job. Give him a round of applause. It's very good. Brilliant timing. I'm happy with the timing. Thank you, Jessica, for being here. Folks, Jessica.